tell everyone is super pumped up and excited about preachers talking about money. And if you brought a first-time guest here today, you're probably really excited that your first-time guest gets to hear a sermon on money. So actually, there have been several people who've been talking to me about, like, hey, we need to talk about stewardship and money, and so that's what we're going to do today. But I don't know why it is so uncomfortable to talk about money in church, but it often is. But we talk about money in other places, right? We talk about it when we go out to eat, or when we're shopping, or when we're planning on buying something, where we talk about money often. But somehow, when we come to church, it's like, well, we can't talk about money in church, but, well, we are, all right? But our faith could be illustrated like this chest of drawers. So we like to compartmentalize our faith oftentimes. We like to put our faith into certain drawers of our life, you know. And so let's say, for example, that top drawer is the faith drawer. And so, you know, you would say to the preacher, hey, preacher, you can open that drawer up. You can talk about whatever's in there. You know, whatever you find, you talk about it. But that second drawer down, that's the money drawer. You open that drawer up, and I'm going to slam your finger shut in it, right? I mean, sometimes that's how it is, but it shouldn't be that way. Anytime we start talking about our faith in sections and like compartments, we are no longer talking about the Christian faith. There may be another faith out there that allows you to do that, but Jesus is Lord of all, or He's Lord of nothing. He's over every part of our life, every drawer, every corner in the drawer, every piece in that drawer. Jesus is Lord of all, or He's Lord of nothing. 38 parables of Jesus, right? 38 parables. 16 of them talk about money. In the New Testament, there are 5 times as more scriptures about money than there is prayer. Money is important to Jesus. And so, Jesus said this. He says, for where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. Where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. So where we put our money reveals where our heart desires lie oftentimes. You can't surrender your heart to Jesus and still clutch your wallet. It's an impossibility. And so the way we handle our money reveals much about how we see Jesus, at what place He is in our lives. Now, God doesn't want your money. If He wanted it, He'd just take it. It's God. It's all His anyway, right? What God is trying to get us to do is to trust Him. Trust Him in all things. That's what God wants us to give us His, He wants us to trust Him. All right, there we go. One of the greatest examples of somebody trusting God is found in Luke chapter 21. And we're going to be looking at that today. And there we're going to see where this person's heart resided with the Lord. Now, a little context before we read that section. Jesus has been teaching in the temple courts, and He is exhausted. He's tired. He's sitting between the court of the Gentiles and the court of the women. And that's where people would bring their offerings in the temple proper in Jerusalem in Jesus' day. And so he's fatigued. He's probably frustrated. He's been debating with religious leaders who are trying to entrap Him, trying to trip Him up. And so he's been dealing with this for a while. He sits down and he's watching people bring their offerings. And so in the walls of the courtyard, there were these lined receptacles, 13 of them, we think, and each receptacle was labeled for a certain gift. So there were gifts for the poor. There was a receptacle, gifts for the temple sacrifices, a receptacle there, gifts for the priest, and so on and so on. And so people would come and they would throw their coins, because there wasn't cash money back then. It wasn't paper money. They'd throw their coins in those receptacles. And Jesus is watching. Jesus is paying attention. And so He observes how the crowds are putting their money in. Luke 21, verses 1 through 4. While Jesus was in the temple, He watched the rich people dropping their gifts in the collection box. Then a poor widow came by and dropped in 2 small coins. I tell you the truth, Jesus said, this poor widow has given more than all the rest of them. For they have given a tiny part of their surplus, but she, poor as she is, has given everything she has. And so these trumpet-shaped receptacles where the offerings were given, people would bring their coins in and they would put them in there to make a loud sound. More coins, louder sound. And so Mark records that there were people throwing their coins in because they were trying to announce how much they had given. And so Mark says that people wanted a big, loud sound. The louder the sound, the greater the show. But nobody but Jesus notices the poor widow give the 2 coins. Isn't it interesting how earth hears things and how heaven hears things? A little bit different, right? And so generosity, you see, what Jesus is teaching us, is determined not by the size of the gift, but by the size of the sacrifice. By the size of the sacrifice. Who's the most generous person in the world today? Well, according to Forbes magazine, Bill Gates has given $28 million from his net worth of $66 billion. Warren Buffett has given $17 billion from his net worth of $46 billion. According to our financial secretary of Cornerstone, the person who's the most generous in the church is, no, I'm not going to tell you. But you thought I would. I don't even know. I don't know what people give. I don't know what you give. Yeah. And she's in here, and she's not going to tell you. But my point is that Jesus views the most generous people are the ones that aren't making headlines. They're not in Forbes magazine. He measures generosity not by the size of the gift, but by the sacrifice behind it. And a generous heart reveals a lot. It reveals that a person is willing to give this up and trust the Lord. In Luke 21:3, Jesus said this. He said, "Truly, I tell you, the poor widow has put in more than all of them." So the Warren Buffetts and the Bill Gates of Jesus' day, they gave enough to get plaques on the wall. Have you noticed in this church there are no plaques on any chairs or any pieces of furniture, right? I don't know if you've ever been in one of those churches. You see these little brass tags everywhere, right? Well, we decided from the very beginning there would be none of that because we are giving to elevate the Lord, not any one person. And so here's this poor woman. She's invisible to almost everyone but Jesus. She's down to nothing. She has nothing left, right? She has no safety net. There's no miracle financial turnaround story on her horizon, right? She comes there and she gives all that she has. Now imagine this scenario on next Sunday morning, right here in Cornerstone. There's a poor widow that enters the church, okay? And she comes up to maybe one of the leaders or maybe one of the greeters, and she says, "I'm down to my last $2. And the Lord has told me to give all that I have and come here to church today." Now, what would your response be? My response would go something like this. Well, let's be reasonable. Let's be sensible here. You're down to your last $2, and the Lord doesn't want you to starve. So why don't we do this? Why don't you keep that? And we have a compassion fund, and we're going to give you some more money, right? So you can eat. And so, let's just be sensible about this, okay? Is that not the response that we would probably give? See, Jesus he's using this widow's faith and trust as a teachable moment for all of us. And so, arguably, has anyone's gift recorded in Scripture done more to inspire giving than this woman's $2 or 2 coins? I can't even think of another example that inspires more generosity than this woman's 2 cents, you see. And so, he says in Mark 12:43-44, "I tell you the truth," he said, "this poor widow has put more in the treasury than all the others. They gave out of their wealth. She, out of her poverty, gave everything she had to live on." And so I don't know about you, but like if I get out of the car and a coin, falls out of the side of the car or out of my pocket and rolls underneath the car, you ever had that moment, right? You're probably not going down underneath the car for a penny, right? Well, some of you might. Nickel, probably not. A quarter, maybe, right? Maybe for a quarter, right? But here, this woman, she's giving this money. This is likely all she had for dinner that night. And so we would advise the modern widow that might walk into our church, hey, let's be sensible. But Jesus, he doesn't stop her. He calls his disciples over and he says, I want you to see something that everyone else is missing. And so he is flipping our thinking about money. And so he says she's given more than all the others combined. God measures money differently than we do, right? So never discount how small your gift might be if it's given from a heart that's sacrificing for God, because generosity is shown not in the size of the gift but the size of the sacrifice, you see. And so this past summer in June we had a great VBS, and the kids were encouraged to bring an offering for Camp Pitt, and they brought a lot of coins, right? There were some checks given, there was some cash given by others, but there were a lot of coins. And I watched a couple of our people count coins in the days following that, and there's this 6-foot table spread out and all these coins, rolling pennies and rolling all that. And it's exciting, right? To see the kids. They get excited. They love camp. They love, to bring their coins in. And so it was very inspiring. There's one story. I'm not trying to embarrass anyone, but there were two sisters, Addie and Ellie, and they had been saving to buy a horse. And they had been saving their coins for a long time. And when it came time for offering, they gave several $100s out of their horse fund for camp. They gave sacrificially. Now, that's just a beautiful story. And when I heard that story, I'm like, I don't want to embarrass anyone, but I got to share that. Because sometimes we need a faith like a child, right? We need to have a faith like a child and a heart that just loves the Lord. And so, we've talked about this in the announcement, but next week, October 26th, is our church mission Sunday. Our goal is $40,000. And for the past 23 years, we've been doing ministry here, and we've been trying to lift up Christ, to lift up broken hearts, right? We've been trying to help people. And after first service, there were several people that came up to me and they said, I'm so glad I'm part of this church. This church has helped me so much. It's, and so there's a lot of good that has happened because of God working through us over so many years. And we hope to expand the campus, to be able to do more ministry, to reach more people. We hope to, every year, increase our giving to missions by 10%. So that's our goal. Every year we keep, giving more to support the missions. So let me walk through a few of these missions. I already mentioned Camp Pitt. So there were 328 campers in attendance this past year, 7 baptisms at the camp. Several more decisions were made in weeks after at the students' home church. And in the past 5 years, there have been more than 530 new campers come to the camp. That's in our county, right? That's a big impact. Another mission we support is Central India Christian Mission. Commonly, we refer to that as CICM. They are under extreme persecution from Hindu extremists, and their Hindu government is. There was a minister that I had met over there in 2002, and he was arrested just a couple weeks ago. So please pray for the people in India. But they do humanitarian work. They have orphanages, a hospital. They train nurses. Train preachers, and so they're under extreme persecution. Please pray for them. Waypoint Church Partners, we've talked about Waypoint many times. I've served on the board there, and it's a great organization to help plant churches in the Mid-Atlantic and help existing churches grow and reach more people. This year, Cornerstone partnered with Waypoint, and we planted a church in Charlestown, Virginia. anthology Christian church. Last September, we partnered with Waypoint, and we planted 2 churches, one in Ashland called Local Christian Church, and another one down in Kingston, North Carolina called Collective Christian Church. You are part of a church planting church. This is what we're excited about this. We do this every year. We get involved. Rwanda Challenge. So Scott McClymans leads Rwanda Challenge. Many of you have heard about Rwanda Challenge. You've heard Scott preach here. They help train preachers in Rwanda and other areas. They go out in other areas as well in that part of Africa. Another organization we support is Alex List's church planting endeavors in Australia. Alex grew up in church here, 7 years old, walks in here, and then he just grows up in the church, grows up at Camp Pitt, and now he's in Australia, and they're trying to plant a new church in South Wales, Australia. Another organization that we partner with is Team Expansion, Elise West. Elise stood on the stage back earlier this year. She has been driven from Kherson, Ukraine. Now she's living in Romania because of the war. She's helping displaced people, especially those who are adults who have special needs. And so she's doing a thing called aquaponics in Romania, where people who are starving to death can learn how to feed themselves through fish and hydroponics. And I don't know, they put it all together somehow, and it makes people food. So that's all I know about it. But anyway, Renew Christian Church down in Durham, North Carolina. It was a church that was dying out. Paul has preached down there in their transitionary year, but now they're growing again. Greg Coverdale called me recently and just encouraged me, and he said, we're doing well. Thank you for the gifts that you provide. And so this is what you're giving to, not just the church, but you're giving to these mission organizations that are reaching locally, regionally, and globally. So this is exciting, and I'm glad you're part of it, and I hope you continue to be part of it. I want to touch back to the widow's story a little bit more. There's a couple more lessons that I just want to point out before we wrap this up today. One is leave a legacy, not just an inheritance. Everyone leaves an inheritance of something to someone, I'm guessing. But this woman left a legacy. She left a legacy, and her gift still speaks, right? Most people plan on giving something to their children, but we can leave a legacy to other people on this is what they were about. This is what they were excited about in life. And so this poor widow, she drops 2 coins into that receptacle, but her gift still speaks, right? And so what will we leave behind? Will it just be an inheritance? No, let's leave a legacy, right? Make a difference, not just a living. One of the things I'm excited about Gen Z and Gen X generations is that they want to make a difference in the culture that they live in. They want to make a difference in the world. And people make a living by what they earn. But people make a difference by what they give. And so how we give will impact people around us. And so this poor widow's gift, it has started a chain reaction that has not stopped. It has not stopped. She gave 2 coins, and people have been learning from her legacy since. The generosity of Christianity continues to impact the world because of her gift. And so from the vantage point of eternity, her 2 coins have made a powerful difference. I recently read about 2 wealthy Christians who were on a short-term mission trip in South Korea. And so they're being guided through an area that they've been giving to by the local missionary. And so they come across this rice field where they see a young boy with the harness over his shoulders and pulling a plow, and his father is guiding the plow through the rice field. And so they stop there to look at this picture. It's kind of curious to the 2 Americans. And one of them pulls out a camera. He takes a picture of it, and he says, that's kind of an odd sight. Well, the missionary, he goes on to say, that's the Chinao family, the Chinao family. And so he says they wanted to build a church in this area, and so they took up an offering, and this family, they didn't have any money to give. So they sold their ox so that they would have some money to give towards building the church. And so this spring, they're pulling the plow themselves to plant their rice. The Americans, they were silent, as you can. It's one of those drop mic moments. You know, like, what do you say about that? Well, one of the Americans says, that must have been quite a sacrifice. And the missionary says, well, they didn't call it that. They didn't call it that. They thought it was fortunate they had an ox to sell. Some people get it. Some people get it. Some people think this is all there is. And some people realize this is the mist. This is the vapor. And so when one of these guys gets back, he calls his preacher up. He says, hey, can we get together? And so they did, and he shows him the picture of this, and he says, I'm going to double my giving, and I want some work to do like an ox. He says, I want to work. You know, it just motivated him us. You know, you see that, and it's just like, it just challenges us. And so, you know, have we given sacrificially? Have we given something that would be like giving up an ox? You know, like, this is a story. True generosity flows from sacrifice rather than abundance. You know, the most generous people in the world aren't the Bill Gates and the Warren Buffetts. They're people just like the widow that Jesus watched. They're just like the Chinao family in South Korea. And so God watches the way that people give. He's still watching patiently, watching people give, seeing what others miss. Now, God isn't counting coins. He's weighing hearts. He's weighing our heart. Where is our heart? And so, I hope He finds the same trust in us that we see in the widow, right? I hope He sees that same trust. And the widow, she gave more than she could possibly imagine, did she not? 2 coins fell in a box, but her story still rings out through eternity. Now, when we die, and I hate to break it to you, but we're all going to die, what will be the story of our lives? Where will we be in this kingdom? Like, what will our life be about? So what I want you to do, your action step, is just really simple. I want you to prayerfully consider how you're giving to the ministry of Cornerstone. I want you to prayerfully consider your generosity gift next Sunday. We would love to reach as many people as we possibly can before we leave this earth or the Lord comes back. And it's exciting to see new people coming to church, but there's even more people to reach. There's more ministry to take place. There's more missions to fund. There's an effort that we need to put forth and sacrifice for, and it's worth it. It is worth it. You know, when people die, you know, one thing they never say, oh, I gave too much to God. I really gave too much to God, right? One closing story, and then I'll be quiet, but I got to tell it again. When we were in India in 2002, I mentioned India earlier, we walked into the poorest region of India, I was told. It's the poorest area I've ever saw. We brought rice and blankets to children who were freezing and starving to death. And they were very, very gracious. We could not walk on their dirt. They took their clothes off. Like, not all their clothes, but like, you know, they took off their, like, saris or whatever, and they lay them on the ground because our feet were more worthy than the ground that they lived in. That's how they viewed it. I mean, it's just crazy. Like, you just felt so like, I don't deserve this. But anyway, as we entered the village, there's this little hut, if you will, built with cow manure and mud and sticks and that kind of thing. Very crude, kind of like little goat tied up on the outside of it. And so we go through this you know, almost like a half a day of talks and giving out food and meeting people, you know. And then they said, we have lunch prepared for you. So we leave that area and we go to this little hut, but the goat's not tied up anymore. the goat was mixed with rice and curry and was fixed up for us on the table. And I turned to Ajay and I said, hey, Ajay, these people are so poor. Why would they give something like that? And he responded with words that went, you know, Bob, they want to give back. They want to give back. That was the best meal that I'd ever received. I just think about that. Like, this is Jesus' heart. This is what he wants us to have. Trust him. Trust him. So as we close out this morning, you know, think about these things. Maybe you have a prayer concern. Maybe you're like, hey, I just need somebody to pray with me right now. Maybe you're wondering what your next right step is with the Lord. God is good all the time. Let's worship.
Thank you for joining us today. If you feel like God spoke to you today and you would like to discuss your next right step with God, please visit cornerstonechatham.org, scroll to the bottom of the homepage, and fill out the form to connect with us. We hope you enjoyed being with us today, and we look forward to seeing how God is working around Cornerstone in person and online.